Generally, we prune clematis in spring, but not all of them are treated in the same way. Some of them can remain practically unpruned. These include clematis from Atragene group that produce flowers from the buds formed in autumn. If we pruned them late in autumn or in spring, they wouldn't flower at all. Now in spring, all they require is removing the dead leaves. They're dry, so it's enough to brush them off. They'll come away easily. Then we cut back the dead shoots and leaf petiolae, but the live parts remain unpruned. Unless, of course, they've expanded and taken over too much space or suppressed other plants. Don't worry then, just use the secateurs. However, if remedial pruning is necessary, I delay it until the blooming's over. The overgrown plant isn't a threat in spring and it looks nice. I wait for it to bloom to enjoy the sight, and only when it's faded I begin the pruning. Now, all I can do here is cut back leaf petiolae and those shoot endings above the buds that have died back, but I leave the main shoots. The Atragene group varieties are the first in the garden to bloom. They start blooming as early as mid-April, and depending on the cultivar they continue even till the end of May. This group includes the most popular cultivars such as PAMELA, JACKMAN and Riga, but also some of the new ones, for example Lemon Dream, Purple Dream or Lemon Beauty. Clematis in Montana group don't require spring pruning either. Similarly to Atragene cultivars, they form buds in autumn, and if pruned, they refrain from blooming. The difference between these two groups lays in their frost hardiness. Atragene clematis survive temperatures up to 30 to 35 degrees centigrade below zero. Montana group clematis are more sensitive to frost. They freeze in 18 to 20 degrees centigrade below zero. Therefore, in the climate of Eastern and Northeastern Europe, they bloom once every couple of years or not at all, since the shoots often freeze and the flower buds never set. Spring is the season for pruning clematis of Viticella and Texanis group. I will now present the way of pruning early large-flowered clematis. Some cultivars, such as Diamond Ball or Maria Skłodowska-Curie, should be pruned moderately. These weren't pruned at all in autumn, but most of clematis in our garden are. It saves us a bit of work in spring. These weren't very tall, that's why they were left to grow freely. The first thing is to brush off the dead leaves. Next, I cut back the dead shoots, as well as those that are spindly, diseased or broken. Finally, I prune the remaining shoots at about 1.5 to 1.7 meters above the large buds. I cut back a spindly shoot like this one right at the bottom. I also like to remove dead leaf petioles. They don't have ornamental value and they can become a nest for some disease.
zawsze jest większe zagrożenie, że rozwiną się na tym jakieś choroby i mogą być kłopoty. Potem pokażę jeszcze...
I will show you in a moment how to deal in spring with those large flowered clematis that received preliminary pruning in autumn. This is Blue Light, an early large-flowered cultivar that needs light pruning. It should be cut back at about 1.5 meters. In autumn, we gave it a rough pruning, leaving some of the shoots to freeze. The winter was mild, and most of those shoots survived. We can see that the buds are already swollen, and this is the right moment to start the spring pruning. First, we need to remove the overgrown shoots. This time it should be a precise job. The cuts placed over these particular buds to encourage new growth as well as blooming. If we pruned the early large-flowered clematis too low, the flowers would be smaller and the bloom poorer in some cultivars, such as NELLY MOSER. Besides, they would start blooming 3 to 5 weeks later. I begin with removing the bark mulch that protects the base, carefully to avoid damaging the shoots. How much of the mulch should be removed? Just enough to leave about 5 to 7 centimeters layer for protection. It will retain water in the soil, prevent weed growth and protect the soil from overheating. On the other hand, if we left too much bark, the base of the shoots could die back. The roots have appeared. If we cover them with much mulch and leave this 5 to 7 centimeter layer, the shoots at the base take roots. During the uncovering and clearing the plant, we also need to be careful not to damage the new shoots at the base, or those that grow from under the ground. They will develop into new shoots, which rejuvenate the plant's base. I'm going to show you how we proceed with the pruning. First of all, we get rid of the dead and spindly growth. Remove it at the very base. If we left it here, it could become a hotbed for disease. Here, the thin shoots have already been removed. Now, we remove those thicker ones above the buds, above the forks. What remained after the autumn pruning is now cut back. The plant is ready to start vegetation season. As you can see, this is a good support for the clematis. The construction elements are thin and the leaf petioles can twine around them. It's detached from the wall, allowing air access. The plant can twine around it. Thanks to the airflow, the plant is also healthier. It's robust and properly pruned, therefore less likely to cause any problems. Early, large-flowered clematis aren't always pruned at 1.5 to 1.7 meters. Some cultivars don't even reach this height, and some of their shoots can die back or freeze if pruned too low. This is MIKOŁAJ KOPERNIK, a cultivar that belongs to this group and hardly reaches 1.5 meters. Its shoots had died back, so it was pruned at 80 centimeters. All the dead and spindly shoots should be removed first. Then we make the cut above the highest live and swelling buds. Now we're going to show you how to prune clematis when the flowers are born on this year's shoots. This should be pruned much harder. Patricia has started removing the mulch here. This is Sweet Summer Love, a FREDA group, that received preliminary pruning in autumn. We left this reserve for the frost, and now we're going to adjust the cutting. The cultivars that bloom on this year's growth, that is of Flammula, Viticella, Tangutica groups, as well as late, large flowered ones, are pruned about 30 to 40 centimeters from the ground. The plant will then bloom beautifully and will stay healthy, effectively improving its looks. If we didn't prune it at all, the bottom part of the plant would thin out. Hard pruning isn't difficult. Again, we start with removing the weakest, thinnest shoots to ensure proper light penetration. We leave the most robust shoots and prune them above the first or second pair of buds, more or less at this height. Nad pierwszą, drugą parą pąków, na tej mniej więcej wysokości. Jak jest słaby pęd, go wycinamy całkowicie. Here we have two trailing shoots. We can use them to strengthen the plant. I arrange them on the ground and cover with mulch. They will take roots and fortify the base. We could also use them for propagation. A plant pruned like this has gained a solid base. New shoots will reach 2.5 to 3 meter height, and from the beginning of July will be covered with flowers. Here grows Prince Charles of Viticella group. This group also includes cultivars Krakowiak, Étoile Violette and Polish Spirit. They're usually fast-growing and highly ornamental in summer. Their flowers are mid-sized, appearing on this year's shoots. We partly pruned this plant in autumn, both to minimize the time of springtime works and to display the support which has ornamental value of its own. The autumn pruning left quite some reserve. This plant should be pruned in spring at 30 to 40 centimeter height. When a shoot is broken, we cut it back low. All shoots, dead or weak, should be removed. The cut is made about half to 1 centimeter above the buds. Make sure there aren't any dry parts left, as they can become infected by fungus. It is best to choose strong buds and prune above them. This is the maximum distance you can make the cut a bit closer, but not less than half a centimeter, so that you don't damage the bud. If you see any old leaf petioles or dead shoots, remove them too. This is how a correctly pruned Clematis of Viticella group looks. The same method of pruning is applied to late large flowered cultivars such as Cardinal Wyszyński. JACKMAN and others, that start blooming in the second half of June or at the beginning of July. Hard pruning encourages blooming as most of their flowers appear on this year's shoots. This is a Tangbutika group cultivar, Lambton Park, similarly to other cultivars of this group, such as Bill Mackenzie, Golden Tiara or Anita. It could be pruned in different ways. We don't prune them in autumn because their seed heads are so beautiful. We like to keep them like this well into spring. Also because these shoots hide their unattractive supports. Now we'll prune them about this height to save the plants the effort of transporting the juices all the way up. This will allow better nourishment of the buds at the base. The cultivars of the Tangbutika group start vegetation period late. The buds start swelling and new shoots appear around mid-April. We leave the top part, and only when the new shoots reach 5 to 10 centimeters and are able to twin round the support, we prune the old ones. The less attractive parts are then visible only for about 4 to 5 weeks, as the new growth develops fast. The cultivars of the Tangbutika group can be left as they are unpruned. New shoots will grow from buds in various places. However, leaving them to grow freely for a couple of years doesn't improve their looks. The flowers appear higher and higher and the base thins out. A hard-pruned plant blooms from the base up. We can see seed heads here that used to be flowers. If a plant is unpruned, it can start blooming in the second half of May. Hard pruned, it flowers in the second half of June. The bloom appears in waves. The first one's in early summer, another one in midsummer, then again in autumn, even into the second half of October. Hardy perennial clematis like those of Integrifolia and Heraclifolia groups are pruned much harder. This is HANAJIMA, a cultivar belonging to Integrifolia group. It received preliminary pruning in autumn, and we can see that the shoots that were left have now died back. Now we prune them at the base. Even if some small buds have appeared on them, don't worry. The best new buds will grow straight from the ground. We prune Heraclifolia cultivars the same way. I'll show you in a moment how it's done. Here's Cassandra, another hardy perennial clematis of Heraclifolia group. We pruned it partly in autumn. First, remove the mulch. Heraclifolia and Integrifolia clematis are like other perennials. The shoots die back at the base and need to be removed, even if they've developed buds. The truly valuable shoots will regrow from the base. We've left 5 to 7 centimeters of bark mulch, just like before, to prevent weed growth and to maintain the soil humidity. Hardy perennial clematis are often thought of as base vines, lacking the ability to climb. They grow to 1 to 2 meters and only lean on their supports. But Clematis crispa and Clematis texensis, as well as all their cultivars, also belong to this type. For example, all cultivars belonging to Texensis group, such as Duchess of Albany or Princess Diana. They should be pruned just like the cultivars in the Integrifolia group. Although buds often appear on old wood, the strongest and most promising are those growing at the base, from under the ground. I prune the plant low above the ground, removing all shoots. But please take a look here at the base new growth appears. They'll turn into long shoots reaching 3 to 3.5 meters and covered in flowers in summer.